may be seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
I probably think what something that on people's mind right now is why Mother Ellis has on her sneakers. I heard it was annual meeting, so I could just dart. Mother Ellis is one of those bad patients. I've had tendonitis in my foot for about 3 or 4 months, and it's finally caught up to me. And so I need to keep on my sneakers. I always need a little bit of nudging to do the right thing. So I have my sneakers on for now until my feet heal. But in life, isn't that how it goes? That someone has to nudge us to bring out the best in us? Today we hear in the gospel that Jesus is at a wedding. Probably like most men, talking on the corner to themselves. You ever go to a wedding and there's the women dancing on the floor and then there's the men on the side? No, there's some men. My dad was a guy that liked to be on the dance floor. But a lot of guys, at least my age, are always on the corner somewhere doing something. But the problem came when they ran out of wine. Now, I like what the steward said. People usually leave the wine, the worst wine, for when people get drunk. So I'm figuring if the wedding ran out of wine, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to go home. But Mary says to Jesus, they've run out of wine. They have a dilemma. This is embarrassing. It's like running out of food at a wedding. It's embarrassing. And so Mary turns to her son, who she knows can do something about it. And Jesus' response is kind of like, well, what is that? Why is that my problem? How many of us have said that in life? Why is that my problem? But Mary is a mom and does what moms do best. Tells the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. Mary doesn't listen to what Jesus says, who says that his time is not now. She goes and pushes him to do the right thing. In life, sometimes we are in need of a little push, a little nudging to do the right thing. And we learn that in Paul's lesson for today, we learn in Corinthians that we have each been given talents and gifts that will allow us to do the right thing. That we have God's Spirit that dwells in us and gives us individual gifts to do the right thing at the right time when God calls. But what happens most often when we hear a nudge or get a nudge from God, we respond, what does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with me? And it's not because we don't know we have a gift or a talent, but sometimes we really are afraid. We're afraid of what people will say. Will they make fun of me? Will they appreciate the gift that I have to give? Will they appreciate my time and my dedication that I have put into doing this work? Am I good enough to do this work? All kinds of things come into our hearts and minds. But remember what Paul says. It is God's Spirit that fills you with your gifts and talents. And it's not about what others will say, but it's what God has called you to do in this world. It's not the fact that it has nothing to do with you, because it has everything to do with you. They all, the thing, if a tree falls in the middle of the wood, who cares? Well, you would start caring if every single tree started falling, and then you didn't have any air to breathe, right? Everything that God calls you to has to do with you. Every human being on this planet has to do with each and every one of us. Could you imagine a world where all of us had that thought, what does it have to do with me? Where would we be? We would be bankrupt. Not just financially, but morally bankrupt. God calls us out into the world and gives us the gifts and talents to do so. So when he taps on your shoulder, instead of responding, what does it have to do with me? Let us actually go out and say, okay, Lord, so you want me to turn this water into wine. Let me think about how to do that, how to make that happen. Let me have enough faith to know that I can do this because you have given me that spirit. For those of you who have been here for the last few Sundays, you would know that I've been speaking about the fact that each of us are a part of the puzzle, right? And now it's backed up with Paul by telling us that we individually have talents and gifts that God has given us. We individually have an opportunity to be a part of God's mosaic. And remember I said that if your piece is missing, the puzzle is never fully complete. I've asked Ruth right here to hand you a piece to remind you of the puzzle. I want everybody to take a piece of the puzzle. So it will remind you that you are a piece of God's world, a piece of God's mosaic. To remind you that maybe the piece that's next to you doesn't fit, you might have to get up out of your seats and go find the piece. Usually, I've done this now, this is my third church that I've done this at. I can't find the particular puzzle set that I used. But my point was, wherever God was going to send me, I always took that same puzzle to remind people that they are a piece of the puzzle and that maybe your piece doesn't fit here. Maybe you actually have to go and look somewhere to find that piece. You know, some of us sit in our churches, in our pews, complacent. Some of us sit angry and gruntled that nothing that anybody ever does in the church is ever right. Maybe it's not here at St. Joseph. But some of us, we sit and we think and we forget that God gives us opportunities. There's for every town in Long Island, there's an Episcopal Church. Brooklyn is known as the borough of churches. So you have plenty of opportunity to go find where you fit in the puzzle. Or maybe you'll just discover if you move from the back to the front or the middle to the back or the front to the back, you might just find your cup of tea right here in St. Joseph's. But I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to look a little bit deeper at the wedding story. The fact that Jesus was called to fulfill a miracle and give to these bride and groom the wine, to help them not be so embarrassed. Because you see that the water, the jugs were about 30 gallons, right? But they were empty. Why not consider the jugs you? Why not you look at the jugs as yourselves? Many of us are longing to be filled. Filled with the love of God. Filled with the Spirit of God. Many of us might be feeling empty or half full, not completely whole. And Mary comes along and tells the servants to do whatever Jesus says, and the servants are told to fill these jugs with water. Now, in order to fill the jugs with water, what do they have to do? They have to move them. Sometimes God sends people into our lives to move us out of our complacency, to move us out of our fears and out of our angers, to move us into a better place to receive and be filled by God. And if you note that what is being filled in the jug is water, what does water do? Purifies and cleanses us. God sees all of us as his vessels, empty and ready to be filled with his Spirit, filled and cleansed and purified and made whole to go out and do the work, to go out and to capitalize on the talents that he has put inside each and every one of you this morning. But are you opened? Are you willing to allow his Spirit to move you? Are you willing to allow his servants to help you along your journey to be to the place where you want to be, filled with God's love and God's joy? You see, being filled with anger doesn't do anything for you. It creates a lot of gas inside, a lot of rumblings. And what comes out is not always clean. It doesn't always smell right. It's not always okay. You end up being mean to the people you love because you forget that it's not them that's bothering you, it's something out there that's bothering you. But allowing God's Spirit to clean you out, to purify your soul, to do good works in this world, it's a blessing. If you note what the steward says, most people serve good wine first, which only indicated that the wine that they were drinking was bad. But nobody said anything. You know, Marvin Sapp, he has that song, "They saw the worst in me, but God saw the best." Oftentimes in life, people will cling to or draw or pull out the worst in you, not willing to see the best that you have to offer, not willing to go behind the mask of anger and fear and frustration that you put out to find the best in you. But Jesus, but God, he wants to fill you with his Spirit, so that when you come out fresh, whole, and clean, nothing but the very best is seen in you. There will always be people who will want to pull out the worst. I remember when I was in seminary, we had to do clinical pastoral education as a requirement. And so I did my first unit, and I was in Chicago with a unique group of other seminarians who had to go through this process. And I often was quiet. I said earlier, I said on Wednesday to the Wednesday people, I'm a shy person, and they laughed at me. But my inclination, my natural tendency is to be introverted and be quiet and shy and observe the people around me so that I can get to know them. But there was one particular guy, his name was Doug, and he was the one that stirred the pot. You know those people that stir the pot? He's the one that would light the fire under those people's butts, and they would just get moving and arguing and yelling. But you see, Doug was angry with the way in which his life was going. And he would never admit it. He would never be truthful to it. But he would always make sure that everyone around him felt just the way he felt internally. Unfortunately, I was not the one. And I would always come back with Doug with kindness, love, gentleness. And he often said to me that after the second week of realizing that he wasn't going to get under my skin, he literally told me, by the end of the summer, I'm going to make you angry. Now, at least Doug was honest. Most people are not honest. They just make you angry. And they go after you. And I simply laughed at Doug and said, well, if that's what you're here for, good luck. I've lived this far without many people rocking my boat. And the only reason why I can say that is because I know that God sees the best in me. And that's all I want to work towards, the best in me. Paul reminds us, those who claim to be of God cannot say curse God. And Doug was on a path that was not of God in my life. And he tried. He really did try all summer long, wasting his time to get me to be angry with him. And in the end, he said, you know, you remind me of my sister, and I miss her dearly. They don't talk, but it was his favorite sister. And all you've ever shown me right now is the kindness that I'm missing from her and her love. And I just encouraged him. I said, well, then you need to pick up the phone and call, because life, we know, is too short. is too short to hold on to unnecessary anger and unnecessary pain. Not when God is waiting to fill us, for us to produce the best wine in the place. Everyone will always try to find the worst in you. But God, remember, will find the best. When everyone around you is looking for a little thing to say, aha, there she goes. I know some people are probably going to say, go pick up the phone, go home and say, look, Mother Ellis is wearing sneakers. And won't tell the full story as to why Mother Ellis is wearing sneakers. But that's okay. I know why I'm wearing it, and my feet thank me for it. What is the best in you this morning? What is it that God is calling you out of your complacence, your fears, your anger, your frustrations, your I can't have it my way moments? And saying, I want the best of you. We are called and reminded this morning that God sends people in our lives and tells us, come out of that complacency. Come be filled with the Spirit of God. So that in the end, when people meet you, when people experience you, even the people who've known you for a long time will say, my God, I have finally seen the very best of you. Amen. Amen.